Yellowstone National Park is best known for its geysers and hot springs, some of which are so beautiful that they've been given names like the Jewel Geyser and the Grand Prismatic Spring. But did you know there's also something else lurking beneath the park? Recently, scientists have uncovered shocking new details about what's hiding in the depths of Yellowstone. Specifically, what we've learned about the magma chambers located deep below the surface of the Earth here. What's happening down there is unlike anything we've ever seen before, and it's giving scientists both hope and cause for concern. So let's talk about this crazy new discovery. But before we get into it, be sure to hit that like button for more videos about Yellowstone National Park. Now, when you think of a volcano, you probably imagine a tall, pointy mountain like Mount Fuji or Mount St. Helens. However, not all volcanoes look like this. In fact, most of them aren't even shaped like mountains at all. They look more like large bubbles under the surface of the Earth, kind of like those weird air pockets you sometimes see in honey. And if you can believe it, that's actually what the magma chamber under Yellowstone looks like too. This discovery was made by researchers from the United States Geological Survey who used seismic tomography to peer into the inner workings of Yellowstone. Using this technique, they found that the magma chamber sits about 6 miles below the surface of the Earth. It's roughly spherical in shape with a very smooth, textureless surface. They also discovered that the walls of the magma chamber are extremely hot, reaching temperatures of up to 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 1,200 degrees Celsius. At first, scientists thought that these high temperatures were just a normal part of being so close to molten rock. However, they soon realized that there was more going on here. By studying the way that seismic waves moved through the magma chamber, they were able to map out its 3D shape, and they found something that shocked them. The magma chamber isn't just a single blob of molten rock. Instead, it's made up of hundreds of smaller pockets of magma that are scattered throughout the chamber like popcorn. And that's not all. These pockets are also constantly moving around, growing and shrinking, and even bursting out of the chamber and making their way up towards the surface. Now don't worry, this doesn't mean that we're about to see an eruption from Yellowstone anytime soon. Scientists have been monitoring this park for decades now, and they've never seen anything like this happen before. Plus, even if it did start moving towards the surface, it would take hundreds of years to make its way up there. Still, though, it's definitely worth keeping an eye on just in case. Now, you might be wondering why this is such a big deal. After all, what does it matter if there's a little bit of magma moving around under the surface? Well, as it turns out, a lot. You see, Yellowstone is one of the most geothermally active places on Earth. There are more than 10,000 geothermal features here, including geysers, hot springs, mud pots, and fumaroles. And all of these features are powered by the heat from the magma chamber below. So as the magma moves around, growing and shrinking, it causes the temperatures of these features to fluctuate as well. And that can cause some serious problems. For example, in 2018, the Jewel Osgood geyser went from erupting every 90 minutes to erupting every 12 hours. That might not sound like a big deal, but it's actually a major change. Luckily, scientists were able to predict this change in behavior before it happened, thanks to their studies of the magma chamber. By monitoring the movement of the magma, they were able to tell how the temperature of the water in the geyser was changing, which allowed them to warn visitors about the potential danger of an eruption. If the magma chamber hadn't moved, they wouldn't have been able to do this, and the geyser could have erupted unexpectedly, putting people at risk of serious injury or even death. So yeah, monitoring the magma chamber is pretty important, but it's not just about predicting changes in geothermal features. It's also about understanding what's happening inside the Earth. As I mentioned earlier, Yellowstone is one of the most geothermally active places on Earth, and that's because it sits on top of a hotspot. A hotspot is basically a plume of hot rock that comes up from deep within the Earth's mantle, and as it rises, it melts the rock above it, creating magma. This magma then makes its way up towards the surface, where it eventually erupts as lava. Hotspots are responsible for some of the most impressive volcanic features on Earth, including Hawaii's Mauna Loa and the Galapagos Islands. But they're also responsible for some of the most dangerous volcanic eruptions in history. That's because hotspots don't really blow up. They just sort of sit there and erupt over and over again for millions of years. And since they're not very predictable, they can catch us off guard. We don't know exactly what caused the magma chamber at Yellowstone to move the way it did, but we suspect that it has something to do with the hotspot below. As the hotspot moves around, it creates different areas of high and low pressure, and these changes in pressure can cause the magma chamber to respond in unpredictable ways. One way it might be responding is by getting bigger. Over the last few years, scientists have noticed that the magma chamber seems to be slowly expanding. It's not a huge expansion, just a few cubic kilometers, but it's been happening consistently since they started monitoring the chamber. We don't know why this is happening yet, but it could be related to changes in the hotspot. It's also possible that it's just natural variation. Magma chambers naturally expand and contract as the magma inside them cools and solidifies. So it could be that that's all this is. Still though, it's worth keeping an eye on, just in case it turns out to be something more. Scientists use a variety of techniques to monitor the magma chamber, including seismometers, GPS stations, and satellites. They also use computer models to try to simulate what's happening below the surface. All of this data is collected and analyzed by the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, which is a partnership between the U.S. Geological Survey, the University of Utah, and Montana State University. The observatory is responsible for issuing any warnings about potential eruptions, and so far they haven't issued any warnings. Even though the magma chamber is moving around a lot, it's still pretty far below the surface, and there's no indication that it's getting any closer to the surface. Also, even if it did come closer to the surface, there are several things that would have to happen in order for it to actually erupt. First, the magma would have to break through the thick layer of solid rock that separates it from the surface. Then, it would have to travel upwards along the fault lines in the rock. And finally, it would have to reach a place where it's shallow enough to actually erupt. The chances of all of that happening are extremely low, which is why scientists are still pretty confident that there won't be an eruption anytime soon. However, they are still keeping a close eye on things just in case. In the event of an eruption, they'll be ready to evacuate the surrounding area and hopefully minimize the damage. So don't worry, Yellowstone is not going to erupt anytime soon. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep an eye on it. Thanks to new technology, we're learning more about what's happening below the surface of the Earth than ever before. And that's helping us understand not only Yellowstone, but also other volcanoes around the world. Who knows what other secrets they're hiding? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my previous video about Yellowstone National Park. Until next time, thanks for watching.